Welcome to Courageously Speaking with Maria Soriano, a podcast highlighting inspiring individuals who made brave decisions to achieve success beyond oneself. Available every first and third Thursdays wherever you get your podcasts.
Suffering. There's also things that happen in your life that cause you a great deal of emotional pain that make you who you are too. Didn't see my father for years and found out at about 9 years old that he wasn't, in fact, my biological father. And then I went through sexual abuse from a family member. And so it was a huge change, one that created a lot of mental health challenges in my life. Trust is violated by individuals in early life that are meant to care for you. You have access, and you don't have individuals who are teaching you how to cope in a healthy way.
So you were coping. You were using
these. I was coping. I was very young, 6 years old, and somebody handed me a strong drink, and I drank it.
And you said six?
6 years old, and I tasted it, and I immediately felt the effect, and I was like, "Oh, this makes me feel better." Nothing else. I haven't felt like that. What that is, that everywhere you go, there you are. So you just go the next place, and there you are, and you think you're going to start over and create this different thing, but if you never address what's really happening, you just keep going from place to place, creating the same chaos. Asked me, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I've always wanted to go to college, but people like me don't go to college. Went the next week for some reason, and then.
Welcome to the premiere episode of Courageously Speaking with me, your host, Maria Soriano. And today is a special episode, not just because it's the premiere episode, but because I'm actually interviewing one of the people I actually do look up to. I met Dr. Shellie Keller at the College of Southern Nevada. She is the director of academic success there. And working with her in a leadership role reminded me that people are not just academic beings or physical beings, that we are emotional, social, and many more. And what I love about Dr. Shellie Keller is that she believes in people. She believes in people, including those that people want to just not talk to, and people that they may regard as, sorry for the term, losers. She talked to students in their level, and she did not know that throughout my years as a tutor for ESL under your leadership, back in the days when I was doing my,
I remember,
you were one person at CSN, and one of the many people at CSN that inspired me to look at people more than just one being. But when I saw your post in social media that you're going to do something about mental health, where did that come from? Don't know where did that come from. Now it makes sense, and I don't know the full story, and I'd like to share this with the world, and I hope you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Dr. Shellie Keller, I know I call you Miss Shellie. You don't even want to be called doctor, but
no.
I don't call you doctor.
It's not that I don't think it's well deserved. It's just, I don't know.
But I think you're somebody that is not into titles. You embody that title. At all. I'm a little nervous. I know we're friends, but I'm a little nervous today because this is quite special. So I know you're somebody that is really embodying that term courageous, and you're also resilient and a leader. So can you start by giving us a brief introduction of Dr. Shellie Keller as a academic success director, also as a counselor?
Sure. First, just thank you so much for such a beautiful introduction. It made me emotional,
Mhm.
but I'm going through a little bit of an emotional time. So this is truly a great day for me to speak and feel really courageous while doing it. So thank you so much for inviting me. It means the world to me. What I want to say is that when I started at the College of Southern Nevada, I worked in retention. And I think it's important as part of my introduction because I spent years working with students, uh, many a day, helping them overcome all of their challenges, and not just in school, but in their lives. And of course, I'm a lot well suited for that now than I was before with all the mental health training, but it led me into being the director of academic success, which is basically over all of the tutoring and learning support services. So I work with a wonderful team of individuals of about, on average, 200 that serve our CSN student population and learning support in a variety of different kinds. And I love developing interventions and helping faculty overcome challenges as well as our students. And of course, always thinking about our staff. So, and that's that part. And then later, I decided to go back to school to become a counselor, and I started my own practice. Um, and so I am the owner of Keller Counseling Services as well as the provider. Um, I've been working. I started out working with. My idea was that I was going to work with people in trauma and addiction because that's primarily what I knew I could be really helpful in. But it has turned into so much more. I've learned that I'm a pretty good couples counselor.
Oh,
I've learned
hey,
who
couples, now you know who to go to.
who knew, right? I swore I would never be a counselor for couples or for anything other than addiction, to tell you the truth. And then I started working with kids, and I was like, oh, I could do that too. So I've fallen in love with the idea of mental health in terms of serving others and helping them. And it's been such a wonderful experience, and it's made me a better director of academic success as well.
I've always been curious. So, as an
Mhm.
academic success director and advisor, what are the reasons why students struggle in school?
Well, I could tell you many stories about, but what I'll just summarize it by saying this: it's normally, and some people do have learning challenges, and they can be overcome, and some are more severe than others, and there's accommodations, there's ways to overcome that. But the personal challenges are what are the areas that really cause a lot of issues with people being able to stay in college. For example,
Yeah.
I can give you an example. I remember one student I met who came, she had failed all her classes, she was in academic suspension, she was in financial aid suspension. She came to me and she had filed appeals and she didn't know how to do what she was doing. And what had happened is her son had passed away with SIDS, and she had gone into a deep depression, and she kept signing up for classes, but then she wouldn't finish them, which is very common if you're in a deep depression like that. It didn't mean that she didn't want to be successfully academically, but she was trying to overcome these challenges, and she didn't know how to reconcile and make it work. So
She
earlier
needed
when I
like
was,
the financial aid, and I needed to finish college, but she's battling depression. And
Mhm.
I wanted to like just reiterate that it's not only students. Like I've seen colleagues, like even like you and I, we have our moments where
Oh yeah.
it's hard to go to work because something
Mhm.
not favorable happened in our lives, right?
Mhm.
But you have to pretend sometimes. Well, not,
Mhm.
I don't want to use the word pretend, but you got
Yeah.
to be strong. Like as a professor, like I go, I go teach part-time at UNLV as an adjunct
Hmm.
faculty. There are
Right.
times I'm not feeling very well, emotionally.
Mhm.
I can't just message my students, hi, I'm not feeling well, emotionally. No classes today. I'm sure they would like that. So they don't have to go to class that night because I teach 7 p.m. class, but we have that responsibility. So it seems like we both have some ways to mitigate those difficulties with navigating our
Mhm.
emotions.
Mhm.
So I hope that today that we can ask you for some advice, so that
Absolutely.
whether you're a student or even if you're
Mhm.
retired or you're a professional, we are not immune to problems. Describe a pivotal moment in your life or in it's set the stage for your journey, like perhaps something from your childhood or early adulthood that influenced who you are today. Because I'm sure something happened, and if you are okay with sharing that, that would be great.
Well, there's a lot of things that happened along the way. And it's so interesting because whenever I thought about this question about a pivotal moment, I kept wanting to find positive things that happened. And there are those positive things that happened, but I was really struggling with it. I was like, and then I realized, oh, that's those aren't necessarily the pivotal moments that I need to bring up. And what I mean by that is there's also suffering. There's also things that happen in your life that cause you a great deal of emotional pain that make you who you are too.
Hmm.
And so,
Very interesting that you would say the word suffering, because most of the time pivotal moment would be, oh, I graduated college, oh,
mm,
I got my doctoral degree, oh, I got
mm-mm.
married. So these are pivotal moments, and I am just so
Oh, well,
interested.
those are pivotal moments,
Yeah, this is
but
suffering. So what's that suffering? Like, is it possible to actually change the trajectory of your life with something called suffering?
yes, um, by making meaning of it,
Oh, making
which making meaning of it. So the moment that I thought of, just to give you an example, was I was working at Chili's. This was years ago, and I was in an active alcoholism and addiction. I'm in long-term recovery, so at that time I was an active alcoholic and drug addict, and I worked at Chili's, and there was this girl that I worked with. I'll never forget her. She every day at work would come to me and say something like, I'm saving a seat for you, or I think the last thing she said to me that really caught my attention though was she said, do you know what other people say about you? And I was like, no. I, I don't know that I'd actually thought of it, at that point in my life. And she said, they say that you would probably be a lot better off if you would quit drinking, or they so she would say things like that to me. And the reason I bring that up is because she is the person that actually is the reason why I went to rehab.
wow. Somebody was
And
courageous enough to tell you something that most likely most people want to tell you, but are afraid to
but
because
are afraid
Ellie
to.
might get mad at me, right?
Mhm.
Wow.
But she would tell me every day we worked together.
Mm. So that like you went
Yeah.
to rehab. How long were you in rehab for?
It was 30 days.
30 days.
30
Okay.
days.
Like, that's
Mhm.
pretty short, meaning to say you really made strides in changing. Uh,
Oh, there's lots more to that
oh,
story,
there's lot.
Amaria.
Okay, okay. Want to know more? I
but
thought
but
30
that
days
but
were
that was
done.
a pivotal moment,
Okay.
things like that. People people who have you come into your life and are courageous enough to say things to you like, um whenever I went through three in vitro fertilizations and none of them were successful, and I was devastated. And I would go to my recovery meeting, and there was a lady there, and every time she'd see me, she'd say, "You become a foster parent. You should become a foster parent." And she said that to me for 2 years. We went to the same meeting almost every day. And she said it to me for 2 years. And finally, I went and I said, "Hey," to my husband, "honey, can we go take some classes about being a foster parent?" So those are pivotal moments, but they have to do with suffering. You see what I mean?
Yeah. So you're saying, so just to like summarize, you mentioned in terms of suffering, you were going through a lot at that time, and you were an alcoholic and a
Mhm.
drug addict. Somebody was courageous enough to let you know, hey, Shellie, please go to rehab, take
Mhm.
care of this and stop drinking. And then
Mhm.
the other time would be for you hearing another person. See, this other people do, like whoever we're surrounding ourselves with would really be monumental in changing you, right? Like, or inspiring you to change. So that second one is like, you should
Mhm.
consider foster parenting, or is that like a term, like, or being
Yes.
foster parent.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that's powerful because I'm not sure if people know that a Harvard study said that it's not money or success, even though it's important, that is the biggest predictor of happiness. It's
Mhm.
actually connection with people.
Oh.
Like it looks like you had people around you. They may not be best friends, but they cared about you enough to be courageous to tell you, hey, why don't you? And you listen. You're not the type that, it's none of your business. Because some people like, I don't want to be told what to do. But you listen to them. My
Mhm.
question is, how do you find that courage to listen to others and not say they're very intrusive? Because
Oh.
it's very hard, right? How do you listen to
I've
others?
I've had my moment. I went through years. I went through years of that, and sometimes it still happens. But I've learned to just stop and breathe and listen. Because most of the time, when I feel that defensiveness come up inside of me, it's because I really do need to listen.
Oh, that is a word that I wanted to ask more. Okay. You said
Hmm.
defensive, being defensive.
Hmm.
Is that a natural instinct of people to be defensive? Like somebody says a suggestion or give you a constructive criticism, a feedback.
Absolutely.
That normal? Like, how do we manage that? Because I think that most people would want us to be good, right? To do well in
Hmm.
life. But whenever we hear a criticism or
Hmm.
like a suggestion, it doesn't feel well, it doesn't sit well. So how do we manage that?
Mentioned taking some deep breaths and listening, but there's another part of this, and there's I'll tell you just this little part that taught me something, and it will get to answering your question. Because I don't necessarily know that you need to listen to everyone.
Oh, I like that. Okay, yeah,
You know what I
okay.
mean? Like,
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah,
Okay, you're right. You have to
some people,
discern who you
you
listen
need
to.
to discern who you listen to and who you don't listen to. So, I remember going to my therapist and saying that I was really struggling with what we call imposter syndrome.
Mm.
I just, I was working at the college and I didn't feel like I really belonged, and so I was really struggling with it. And I told my therapist, I don't know what to do. And so she suggested pick three people that you trust,
Mm.
just three people that you trust, and go to them and ask them if they'll meet with you. And then when you meet with them, ask them, some honest questions like, this is what I'm dealing with. Can you just share with me how you perceive me as a professional, as a human? And I did that. And she said, no, you have to be, yeah, you have to be ready, and you have to sit and you have to listen. You have to choose people you trust. So there's, the trust factor, there's the willingness. Um, and I did that. And it was a beautiful experience. And since then, along the way, I've continued to practice that. So if I'm really struggling, I go to someone who I trust.
This is your inner
And
circle, right? Your inner
yeah,
circle. There's also saying that you are the top 5 people you hang out with or you talk to in a
yeah.
daily basis, or so another thing that I wanted to like really reiterate here, when you
Mm-hmm.
said that you have to trust and have to be willing. I think there's a gap though, like between like when you're triggered, right? Like you heard somebody, hey, Shellie, you should
Mm-hmm.
stop drinking, right? It
Mm-hmm.
triggers in your brain something called amygdala. And I learned this. I know I'm not you. I'm not.
No, it's true.
Go to school, but
It,
there's something called amygdala that I learned from a conference, and
absolutely.
that amygdala is making you defensive. And then that's the limbic system, the animal part of our brain.
Right.
And there's
Right.
something called neocortex that makes you
Right.
rational. So my
Right.
question is, maybe I'm willing, maybe I want to listen, maybe I want to trust, but there's a gap physiologically,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm glad you said physiologically. I'm glad
yeah,
you said physiologically because that really is the piece. I mean, it's a missing piece that I don't necessarily I know I didn't. And I think many others missed the point that the body and the mind
they're
are very much
connected.
connected.
What is
And
your
so,
strategy? What is your strategy in that moment?
yeah,
You mentioned breathing.
breathing.
Eating,
Um, so I practice deep breathing techniques every morning, afternoon, and evening. I meditate. Um, I, I, I I talk to individuals who I trust, and I let things out so I don't hold them in.
oh, that's the
I
you hold them in, right?
Right. I understand that my nervous system is likely to shut down if I don't do these things.
So that's the
So,
physiological side. So you mentioned that we need to know it's not just, oh, if I'm willing, it will stop. There is a physiological reason why you get defensive. That's our amygdala defending us. You don't have to respond immediately, especially in
uh-huh,
difficult situations. You can just say,
exactly.
"Can you breathe? Um, let me talk to you about that later. Thank you." So
Yeah,
having that system, you have to just practice that so that you practice your brain. So I guess like
yeah.
physiologically, it's important to recognize that and not deny the fact that you're angry or you're triggered, right?
Right, right. And I don't know if you've ever read the book by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning.
You know what? I've been wanting to. Tell us more about it.
Okay, well, the reason I bring it up is because he talks about, he was in a concentration camp, and he was an MD psychiatrist, and so he realized soon that he could survive by making himself useful. Um, the book is rather vivid about what happens during his time in the concentration camps, but the thing that really caught me is at the very end of the book, or not maybe at the last page, but like
Towards
when
the
you're
end.
really summarizing towards the end, right? When he talks about there's a space between stimulus and response. It could be like this, or it could be like this, and the idea is to realize there's a space, and that whatever happens that triggers you or um, causes you to stress, um, you need to take that space before you respond.
So stimulus and your response. Some people would have uh, like a big gap between those, and some are short.
Very
So
short.
you respond immediately. And I think for most people who don't have the like strategies yet, you just
Mm.
like defend yourself. Like
Right.
I think that I want to know strategies later.
I'm going to share some of the story and maybe leave a little bit of it out, just because of being thoughtful about others. But at the same time, I think it's important. Um, when I was born, into a family of two sisters, which I was number three, and mom and dad. And at 4 years old, my parents split up. In a way, my family split up, Um, and what happened was, I didn't see my father for years, and found out at about 9 years old that he wasn't, in fact, my biological father. And so that was devastating, because I knew that he loved me. I knew how much he cared for me. Um, there was a connection. So that was a very difficult thing to process through, and it took me years. And um, but it's an important part of my story because it really does make me who I am today, in many ways, because I um, remember earlier when I talked about suffering. Yeah. So I I honestly believe that because of the emotional suffering from my family splitting up and me going to Oklahoma, and then I had my mom, but she was young and she was working 3 jobs, and I was living with my grandma, and then I went through sexual abuse from a family member, and so it was a huge change, one that created a lot of mental health challenges in my life.
So, do you think that
Uh,
any of these sufferings back in childhood um, has led you to your drug addiction at one point and then your alcoholism?
oh, absolutely. You don't have individuals who are teaching you how to cope in a healthy way.
So you were
So
coping. You were using
I
these
was
as
coping.
cope. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's what happens. You're coping. You don't start out, because you think, oh, this is I'm gonna ruin my life with this stuff.
No one wants to
It's
ruin
no
your
one wants to
life.
ruin their life, but they see others doing it. In my case, I was very young, 6 years old, and somebody handed me a strong drink, and I drank it,
Years old.
and
You said
yes,
six.
6 years
Oh,
old, and I tasted it, and I immediately felt the effect, and I was like, "Oh, this makes me feel better. Nothing else. I haven't felt like that. So then after that, I just every opportunity I had, um, I would I had access. It was in my family, it was in my environment. And it's nothing, this is uncommon. It's not like my family was horrible.
okay.
It's
That
very
that
common.
instance
It's
did
very common.
introduce you at 6 years old, introduce you to alcohol. That so now it goes back because earlier we talked about the amygdala. It's physiological when something like there's a stimuli. It seems like even coping has to do with physiological effects of so let's say drinking. It made you feel better at the moment, and your brain remembers that you
Mhm. Mhm.
physiologically feel better. You feel the effects, so now you correlate feeling
Mhm.
good with this so that you don't have to feel the effects of your real problems in life,
That's
right?
exactly right. That's
So
exactly right.
um, I think a lot of people
Oh,
can really relate to this. Um,
absolutely.
how long,
Absolutely.
if I may ask, how
Mhm.
long did you cope this way?
Um, so I had my first drink at 6. By the time I was 9 years old, I was actively drinking.
Hmm.
Um, so from 9 until, let me do the math here.
Yeah. I
From,
cannot believe I did not know this, and
yeah.
I am very grateful for you, Miss Shellie, for you're being so vulnerable. because this is news to me.
Oh, yeah. I Well, I don't normally like walk around telling everybody this, but this is,
So it's it.
you wanted me to be courageously speaking, right?
Yeah, this is, this is really courageous of you, because I'm sure some of our students, right, are
Uh-huh.
watching the show or listening to this podcast and
Right.
may not know this about you.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. 26 years.
Wow.
26 years. It got really bad too.
Yeah.
In
So,
fact, I moved to Las Vegas after being homeless for 2 years, um, because my mom was there and I needed somewhere to live. That happens a lot. Like people move
like go
everywhere.
deep within you, like, why am I hurting? How can I fix this? But on the other hand, I already know how to cope, but in
Hmm.
your mind, perhaps, is this the right way? Is there a better
Hmm.
way? But you're already
Hmm.
stuck in
Oh,
this.
you're so stuck. By that time, you've used alcohol and drugs to cope, or whatever a person uses to cope. There's other unhealthy ways to cope, but um, that was what I used, and among other unhealthy ways. But that was definitely um, one. I remember as I was driving to Las Vegas, a very important person in my life, one of my sisters, called me and said, "Don't go there. You'll die." Yes, you will die. Well, Las Vegas. If you're not from there,
We're so
Sin
fun
City,
here.
Sin City. You've got your sister who's been homeless, drinking herself to death, going to Las Vegas of all places. And so she's begging
Ironic.
me not to go. Huh?
Ironic. You're in Las Vegas, and this is where you started your journey of healing. So,
That's exactly what
uh,
happened.
wow,
That's
that's
exactly what happened. I'm so happy I went to Las Vegas.
really.
Oh, I went there in October of 94. I met my husband in January of 95. We didn't get married in January of 95, but I met him soon after I moved there. Who's a very important, uh, talk about a pivotal moment, would be
The
meeting my
positive one,
husband.
like meeting your husband. And by the way, for those who are
Mhm.
listening and viewing, Dr. Shellie Keller is currently in Ohio with her family.
Yes, I
So that's why
am.
when she's saying there, is she lives
Oh,
there.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, so and then that's why
Thanks for clearing
I
that
love
up.
the backdrop. It's like
I said,
very
this is not
lush.
Las Vegas back here.
Yeah. So yeah, let's go back to your story about your husband. So you met your
Right.
husband in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I met him. I was working at a bar. I was in food and beverage for 18 years. And
Oh,
so, yeah, that
this
was
is the
my,
right place for you, food and beverage.
it was. I learned a lot, actually. I actually am so happy because I learned a lot about people and working with people. But yeah, I met him while I was working. We started talking, and I had no idea because he asked me to go out, and we went out, but what I didn't realize is that I was meeting somebody who was gonna um, make such a huge difference in my life.
How so? Because when he met you,
Well,
you still have struggles, right? You're not like the
I,
perfect Shellie Keller.
oh, I was a very
Hey.
active. Well, I'm still not perfect, but
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah.
but I was very active in my addiction, and it took him about 3 days to go. I think there's I think there's something different going on here.
Oh my
And
gosh, I
and
agree with this.
and what's so interesting about it though is you go back to connection. When we met, it was, I think, one of the first times in my life um, that I was so authentic with someone. And earlier when you said that connection is important, so is being authentic. And when you meet someone who loves you, just be for you who you are. You don't have to mask it. You can just be who you are. And that's how it's been with my husband. And it hasn't been easy. We had many, many trials, but he persevered. Um, he pushed me. He was insistent. And I went through a lot of rehabilitation centers, not just one.
So he
And my
there
husband
with
was
you.
with me the entire
He did
time.
not give you up. Do you know why?
No, I have a
Brave
feeling.
man, right? It
Yeah,
takes a brave man to accept
I
you for who
think
you are, right?
honestly, I think he knew who I really was.
Hmm.
He knew who I really was. He got a taste of it, he here and there, he and
He loves you more, he loves you
he
more
he
than
knew who I
like
really was.
your struggles, He was
Mhm.
willing to work with you on through
Oh,
those.
and I will tell you this, like at the very end of my drinking and using, he actually left. He was like, okay, that's it. I can't take it anymore. He left. And that was a very pivotal moment too, because I got sober.
So that's what pushed you. Like
Yeah,
he
sometimes people have to have consequences, right?
Yeah, we have all of the things that we do, even when people forgive us, whatever we do
Mhm.
has consequences, right? So everything we do
Exactly.
has consequences, and you have to face those consequences. But what led you and him back together when he already left? What brought you back together?
Yeah. Um, we kept talking. We still lived in the same place, but he left and he went to his friend's house for a while. And um, so he knew that I was actually putting effort in,
Hmm.
and came back. Yeah,
So tell me, not everybody has a husband like yours, right?
right, right.
But it's a personal question. How do you find a husband like that? How did you? So for our
I
single
don't know.
listeners, they'd like, I'd like to find a husband that would be there for me through the good times and bad, right?
I have no clue how I got so fortunate. I was certainly very fortunate to meet him that day. Um,
You were open. Hey, you were open to talking to him, even though you have
mhm,
struggles. You didn't close yourself, from other people. And I think I want to just share that with you. A lot of
mhm,
times people want to just close themselves and put in themselves in a box. It's like, please don't
mhm,
talk to me. And sometimes
uh-huh,
people, like in terms of relationship, a lot of people want to
mhm.
be perfect in order to be in a relationship. I would be perfectly happy. I know there is a saying that
Right.
you have to be not broken anymore, but I don't think there is a person in the world. I don't care if you are a professor or a scientist or a lawyer, actor, whatever, but everyone is broken. One part of you is broken here and there. It may not be as deep as others, but there are times we're broken.
Right.
And if
Right.
we are so perfect, and I'm only gonna date if I'm perfect, I guess you're not gonna meet anyone, right? So you got to be vulnerable and allow yourself that I
Right.
may be broken, but I'm willing to grow with someone. And I think that's one other courageous thing you did is you did
Mhm,
not shoo him away. It's like, stop talking to me. I'm going through so much. You allowed yourself to be known in your imperfection and the good things about you. You shared that with him. And that's why
mhm,
you have a relationship. And you were saying it's not perfect. You went on trials together. And that's what
mhm,
all relationships are about.
mhm.
It's perfect.
Earlier when we were talking about connection and being authentic, that really that made a huge difference in meeting him and being with him, because you also mentioned being closed off. And
Mm.
I was very closed off. I didn't trust people. I didn't tell people how I really felt. So
Why?
I
Why?
held things in. If the trust is violated by individuals in early life, that um, are meant to care for you,
Mm.
then an individual will develop the idea that you can't trust anyone. You can't trust those that are supposed to care for you, right?
That,
So you develop.
that is so powerful, what you just said. Like the people you're supposed to trust do hurt you. And when they do something that is even like, you know, people hurt each other, like families, it's
Sure,
normal. Like,
sure. Yeah, of
but
course.
but when it's deep seated, like
It's,
it's an act of betrayal of trust that's in a
mhm,
deeper, like your dignity and your core. That's what really change you and make you
mhm,
not trust a lot of people. I think for me, and I'm just
mhm,
gonna share with you, for me, I'm very trusting. It's weird because
mhm,
even though I had growing up, I came from a broken family. A lot of people would think I didn't, but I never even grew up with parents. I grew up with aunties and uncles. You would
yeah.
never know my coping mechanism was I'm going to be so nice to everybody. I'm going to be loving others. It's my coping mechanism is to love my community, to love my classmates, my teachers,
Mhm,
everybody. But what I didn't know is I was so people pleasing because
mhm,
of that. Like, you know, perhaps something was wrong with me. That's why came from a broken family. So
mhm.
maybe if I was perfectly nice, would have been
That's
less.
very common. Very common.
That like normal? You said very,
Very normal.
yeah,
Very
but it's
normal.
like more positive coping mechanism. Doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy, but it was
It,
positive, you know?
it depends. Depends on, because there's boundaries, right? Like people pleasing can get way out of control.
Yes.
Like if you're spending your whole time always thinking about how to please others and not taking care of yourself, then that's not a healthy coping
And I
method.
think that I came to a point like that. I grew up, I went to college that I was a
Mhm,
scholar. So I didn't have a
mhm,
lot of money to go to school, but I wanted to go to one of the best schools in the Philippines. So I'm going to get there no matter what. Education is key. So I went there and I am not rich. You know, I
mhm,
don't even know how to put makeup on, don't know
mhm,
how to, you know, I didn't look good. That's what my bully said. I was bullied every day of my life in that college. Still love the college, but I think I may have mentioned this to you when I was asking you if you could be part of the
mhm.
show. Um, I went to the restroom during lunchtime to eat my food because I was afraid to be bullied.
Mhm.
And I was still pleasant because I would never fight because I was nice.
Right.
But and I'm just so blessed to have a community that I was part of a club where in every time I was bullied and I had to stay in the restroom so that my bullies were gonna be not there anymore.
Mhm.
I'm just thankful to have people who loved me and reminded me who I am, and I don't know if I didn't have them, I couldn't say that at home. You don't know what happened to me in school because I want them to know I made the right choice to go to that college.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And
Yes, I know exactly. Yeah,
you
I
know, so
understand.
how do you cope? Like, so, like, you know, I felt like that was the pivotal moment for me is that somebody loved me. If in the world you love someone, regardless of their perfection or imperfection, you don't know how much you change their life. And for all my friends, and if you're watching, thank you for loving me and accepting me, you know, even if I didn't have the resources that you have as somebody, most of the people there who go to that school as a private school for girls, they're very rich, powerful, you know, all of that. And I wasn't. And
Wow.
because of somebody who loved me without anything in return, I was able to love instead of hurting myself. I never hurt myself. I wanted to be great, and I became an honor student. I said, I'm going to the United States of America. I'm going to be a professor one day. I'm going to have my own house. I'm going to have this, and that. And I'm not thanking my bullies that, oh, thank you for bullying me. I'm not like, I'm not sadistic. Please bully me.
No.
No. But it was love that taught me that I will continue to be pleasant to a point. I will not ever
Mhm,
allow people to bully me again, but
mhm,
I will do it in the place of love. And my question to
mhm.
you is: you mentioned you fostered, and I assume
Yes,
adopted, and
yes,
I think that is an act of love.
yeah.
So tell me more about that experience because you're struggling but yet you decided to do something, an act of love by fostering and adopting kids. Why
Mhm.
did you do that?
Well, first, I want to say, in response to what you just shared, you made meaning out of suffering.
Mhm.
That's what that is. What a beautiful job you did, by the way.
Thank you.
So I just want to share that. Yeah. Okay. So whenever I was in my undergraduate, doing my undergraduate degree, I met a professor. He was my one of my business professors. His name was Dr. McAllister. Oh, now I'm crying.
No, it's
uh,
so totally
but
okay.
I am so grateful for him and so many people in my life. But um, he's part of this story as well as my friend who kept saying, "Become a foster parent, become a foster parent, become a foster." But what he said to me is, I went to him one day, and I was, I remember when I went to college, I had a ninth grade education, and
And you said it
I
was like
I
in your
took
30s. It's not, we're not talking about 20s. It's your
no, it's 30s. Yeah, by the time this is happening, I'm probably about 35, 36, and stuff like that. We didn't adopt. I was 42 when we adopted. So it was later, but there's something that he said that put me on the path. And he said this to me. I went to him and I said, I don't know what I want to do.
Mm.
He goes, well, what do you want to do when you were younger? I said, I don't know. I always wanted to help people. I always wanted to help people, but I can't help people. I mean, look at it. Look what I've been through. Like, how am I going to help someone? Like I can barely help myself at the time. That's the way I thought, right? And then he said, well, let's say at your funeral, what do you want people to say? And I was like, I want them to say that I did everything, to make the world a better place. And he said, what's helped you the most? And I said, education. And that started me in that path. But at the same time, the reason that I bring him up in this story is because he really helped me find that place within me. So after 3 in vitros, IVFs, in vitro fertilizations, after the third one, I had people offering to be surrogate, uh, to go that route, and um, I I decided, with my husband, I said to him, I don't want to do this anymore, and I don't think this is what we're supposed to do because it's not working, and there's other people in this world who need us. And I said, I just one condition, but there's one condition. If if we do eventually adopt, we have to adopt children who are affected by drugs and alcohol. And he agreed, and that's what we did.
Wow. It came on full circle. That just like that pricked my heart because I was not ready to. I was not expecting that. Um, so your one condition was you were not asking, "Hey, I need a perfectly healthy baby. I'm
No,
going
and they give you the
to
list. They
yeah,
give you a piece of paper like check blonde hair. I said,
wow.
I'm not checking any of that. I just checked affected by drugs and alcohol.
What a
And
brave thing to do.
and my husband agreed. And people asked me, what are you doing? And I'm like, why would you do that? And I'm like, why wouldn't you?
But you're now turning into your purpose. Like you are not
Yeah.
just, oh, suffering, this is a stimulus, I'm going to respond. You're now being proactive because I
Absolutely.
went back to school at 35 years old with a
Mhm.
ninth grade education. Look at you
Mhm.
now, Dr. Shellie Keller. And then
Mhm.
now you have another suffering, but instead of falling victim to, oh, why other people can and I can't, you decided,
Mhm.
I'm going to own this. it's hard. Let me do something else. I love to help people. That's your purpose. That's your value. My
Hmm.
help is to adopt, to foster first, and then adopt kids. And you didn't even leave it at that. I'm gonna adopt kids whose parents had, addiction, just like me, because I
Hmm.
know how it feels. And I'm
Hmm.
turning something suffering, like something negative, to something so beautiful, which is parenthood. And you made
Right. And what a better way to make meaning of all of that, right?
Yeah,
To
I
use
love
all of those
reading.
experiences, to
Yeah.
use all of those negative experiences and things that I didn't like about myself to now, like, it's become so useful.
How did education help you with your mental health? Um,
Oh,
like how, because people say I don't need to go to school. I can just, like learn on my own, which is true. We can all learn on our
it's
own.
true. It's true.
But how did like a
Hmm.
college education help you? Because you already were working. You literally in Nevada, in Las Vegas specifically,
Yeah, I
you
was
don't need
working.
a
I was
college
in food and
degree to
beverage.
get a job, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was in food and
What is
beverage,
the
although,
benefit of going to college?
yeah, well, so when I went to okay, so one, I dropped out of school after the ninth grade, right? So when I went to rehab, the counselor there,
Mhm.
same question as Dr. McAllister. So, what are you going to do? Food and beverage was very much connected to partying for me. And
Oh,
so whenever I made the decision that I needed to separate. And it was very scary because it's what I'd done, you know. That's how I made money. That's how I survived, right? So, but I decided that I needed to separate. But the 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 counselor asked me, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I've always wanted to go to college, but people like me don't go to college. Um,
what do you mean people like me don't go to college?
that's how I felt. Like I felt like people like me didn't go to college because I wasn't smart enough, because I didn't finish high school, because of the life that I'd led. Like, to me, people who went to college were mm, elite, if you will,
Elite, yeah.
definitely much better than me in my mind, right? So he said, well, you could go to a community college. So for some reason, I signed up. I went to CSN when I got back. I missed the first week because I was so afraid. I stayed in bed and I told everybody I was sick.
Hmm.
But the truth is that I was just super afraid to go.
It was the
Um,
fear stopping you. And
yeah.
there's a pattern here because I've seen that for myself too. Like you're in
Mhm.
bed because you're afraid. So what's in your mind
Mhm.
is affecting you physiologically. Like I'd
Mhm.
rather stay
That's
in bed.
exactly
That
right.
for my fear going.
I
Oh.
can't get out of bed. Like yeah, it was
So the
so
next week you showed up.
scary.
You showed up next
I
week.
went the next week for some
Oh,
reason, for some reason, and then I mean I'll never forget turning in my first assignment, and in that class the professor handed me my paper back and said, I don't know what your plans are, but you should consider continuing college. And I
wow.
was like, and then that was a validation. Oh, somebody tells me I can do this. Somebody's telling me I can actually do this. Somebody who's a professor is telling me I should do this.
And you
So
didn't
how it
ask
changed
if
me.
they said it to you freely
Mhm.
on their own,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Wow. And do
My
you think
professors were super instrumental during my undergraduate and graduate uh,
degrees,
degrees, and teaching me. I looked up to them. I would go and meet with them. Um, I started seeing that there was a different way to live,
wow.
and it changed my life. It gave me a means to survive, um, that I never imagined. Never
So you
imagined.
you meant to say that it also, like, remember when I said the connection is very important, that connection that you got from being in college, being
Hmm.
brave, making brave decision of actually staying in school,
Hmm.
what really helped you aside from your internal strength is that
Hmm.
people believed in you, including professors that maybe you look up to. Oh wow, they have a doctoral degree, they're teaching, and how can they say to me, I'm in like in my 30s going to school. How can they say that I should continue and that I'm pretty good at it? It means a lot,
I
right?
was like, wow, it means a whole lot to that validation was everything to me. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that. And it continued to happen, and I worked really hard, and I learned, and I listened, and I connected with people along the way. And at the same time, though, I have to say, it wasn't just education; it was also therapy. That took a lot of effort on my part, but I eventually met. Um, I, well, I eventually realized that the only way I was going to make it is if I started trusting someone and
Wow.
opening up and telling the truth about what was happening. And and,
Telling the
and
truth. So you're being authentic, being vulnerable and authentic, that there's no mask. And if there was, that professional knows how to remove those layers from you,
and
right?
so that happened too. Those things were happening at
Simultaneously.
this simultaneously.
Now it makes so much sense to me the way you are at CSN, because for our viewers and listeners who don't know, we used to work together at CSN,
Yes.
and I was in recruitment. You're in academic success, and even though I only had a short gig of doing my ESL tutoring because of my graduate degree department,
Mhm.
thank you for allowing me, so I have an
Of
internship. um
course.
Now it makes sense the way you are with people. Like, I've always thought, like, why she has so much patience for people. She's so busy as a leader, yet you have time to talk to me. You carve time not just for staff as well, like for students. And as a director level, most people, I'm a director, don't need to deal with little things. You actually have an open door policy, and if you're busy, you find a way to, like, okay, we'll talk, or you assign someone to help someone. You're not like, no, I'm busy. Like, it, it seems like your past of knowing your purpose of helping others has really helped you the way you are as a counselor and as a higher education professional. So my question is, how do you find that purpose? In your story you mentioned that you just knew you want to help people. How
Mhm.
do you know what you like,
Mhm.
right? A lot of people tell me, like, it's well and good for you, Maria or Dr. Keller, you know your purpose. I don't know what makes me happy. What's one way to get there?
Education and becoming a counselor has been super impactful because, quite frankly, I learned so much during these last, since 2017, I guess, is when I started counseling, 2018, when I started studying anyway, or
Yeah, we
anyway, the
graduated the
point
same
is,
time.
yeah,
We graduated the same time, UNLV.
yeah, yeah. That's when I really started learning so much more about my values and opening up my mind to understanding others. So
Yeah,
so so many of us feel like our stories are so unique.
not much, because other people go through that. They just have a different context, right? As you,
Different
I think,
context,
like with your
different.
story, I wanted to, share. I think that sometimes if you're just on your own and think, you may not find it. But when you go out, like, a lot of times people think that, oh, well, because you know. But most of
Hmm.
us didn't know what we know until we exposed ourselves. We went back to school, went to work, we went through
Hmm.
different things, a lot of stimuli, and how we
Hmm.
responded. And then that's how, oh, this makes me sad. This makes me happy. And then when you keep doing it, what makes you sad, that makes you sad. When you keep doing what makes you happy, this is me. Because just like you, I love helping people. Like
I
any
love
dreams
helping
I've
people.
had, has to help others. And any job
Mhm.
I've had wherein I wasn't helping so much and I'm taking more than what I give, I
Mhm.
become miserable.
Absolutely.
So that's how
Absolutely.
you don't necessarily have to, oh, I'm gonna go to the mountains. As soon as I'm done meditating, I would know what I want. Sometimes you have to go through phases. Be open to experiences. You're asked to come to this
Mhm.
party or like this birthday party, go. You're asked to go to this retreat, or perhaps, hey, this is a new job. Would you like to interview? Go to that interview.
Right.
You can say
Right.
no, right?
Right.
Right? And
I
you have to be courageous to try new things to find yourself.
Yes. Oh, and I've certainly done that. What makes me the happiest is to know that I'm being useful.
Love
And
that.
when I feel like I'm not being useful, um, I'm not happy.
And I think that it's most people, they just don't know it. If you're familiar, I'm sure you're familiar, Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs is one of my favorite.
Absolutely.
I think
Absolutely.
the pinnacle of that is not, it's like self-transcendence. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
not before it was just self-actualization,
Accusation.
but there's a self-transcendence
Mm-hmm.
wherein it's beyond you. Because you would think, like, why would a billionaire, for example, have to do philanthropy? You know, why do you have to
Mm-hmm.
do that? You can just have fun. But people gravitate towards, once they get everything, they have the food, shelter, security, sense of belongingness, doing, having even your legacy, you haven't even passed away, right? And you made strides
Mm-hmm.
in the world. And then now you want to help others, instead of like keep going, to serve yourself. And I think that that speaks a lot,
Oh,
right? The
mhm.
self-transcendence. I feel like there are people though that this you bypass those. Like, for you, you didn't have all of the things checked, but even in when you were in the first two levels of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, um
Mhm.
you were already going for the self-transcendence. I feel like there are some people that are just gravitating towards that and need to bypass the others, and I think you're one of them. And I don't know if there's a study about that, but I think you're one of the epitome of people who actually do care. And I think being useful is even being conservative.
Mhm.
You want to make a difference. You don't ever want to claim you're this and that. You don't post about your recognition awards. We had to tell you, just so you know, she's a doctor. Like, we had to tell people, these are the things she has done, people. You just want to be behind the limelight and do great things. And
Mhm.
you're such a special person. And I know I keep saying that to
It's
you.
so interesting that you're saying that, Maria, because when I finished my PhD, what the next step? I'm supposed to advance, right? I'm supposed
Yeah,
to
you
by
could
now I should
be
be a
by now.
president of a college,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Or
yeah.
or whatever. And I started that journey, and you know, I'm so grateful things turned out the way they did, that I realized that was not where I was useful.
Wow.
And that's whenever I decided to go back to school to become a mental health counselor. um, I love the work that I do at CSN, helping others learn how to help others, and helping others. And I love working in mental health. I feel so useful. And not only that, Maria, but every day I the things that cause me the most emotional pain help someone else um, change their lives.
Especially in the college environment, as well as in your counseling. So
Yeah.
yeah, my question is, you mentioned this earlier, like, I'm not perfect or I still have my struggles. So even though you
Right.
graduated school, you're counseling others, are still there moments wherein you feel that imposter syndrome, and also you're struggling and you know the
Mhm.
strategy, but it
Mhm.
seems so hard to implement those strategies on your own, and you're still
Mhm.
struggling and you're still coping, and
Mhm.
you go back in the days, like, is
Absolutely.
has that happened? And tell us a little
Absolutely.
bit more about that, because when you
Absolutely.
look like Maid, you done it, you got it. um We want to know, do you still struggle?
Absolutely, I still struggle. Absolutely. Um, let's see. I'm trying to think of the right example to give to you, but I absolutely still struggle. But I think this is a really good way to share about that. The thing that makes me struggle the most as a leader is when the people that work for me are hurting, or I can't help them, or something happened that, you know, caused them harm, or, like, I mean, I and I'm not saying this to boast, or humility is something that's super important to me, but I do constantly think about that. And that's a huge struggle for me. And recently, well, when you are a leader and you have that many people that you work with, you sometimes you fail at helping someone. That causes me a lot of struggle.
And sometimes as a giver, right? When it's like I'm supposed to know how to help them. Why
Mm-hmm.
did I fail? And it cuts deep because you felt like you can help, but you weren't able to. And so how do you cope with that? It seems like it makes you very emotional, right?
Getting away for a little while,
Mm,
where you can get your mind clear, not running away forever, but,
mm. A break.
taking a break, taking time to take care of yourself, which we haven't even mentioned self-care that much, but self-care is super important. It's taking the time to do something you enjoy, and also recognizing that I cannot be responsible for what happens to everyone.
Mm. You're
And
there to help, but people have free will. They still can
that's
reject
right.
or maybe follow it later because they're not ready yet. How about those people who have to work 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet? Do you have like maybe a strategy for them to have self-care when they're busy? Is that possible? Or do we just like, okay, so I have to work two to
Mhm.
three jobs.
Well,
I don't
sure. I
have
mean,
luxury to do self-care.
I've lived that life too.
Oh, you did, yeah.
I've worked 2 jobs and gone to school full time for years, and unfortunately, I didn't practice a lot of self-care, and I could have, had I known. So it's a great question. All
Mm-hmm.
right, because you can still take time to do something you enjoy, or um, connect with someone, find a way to connect with a support system, create a support system. That's super important. Um,
Because there are different kinds of rest.
Physical,
There's different kinds of rest. It's not just like one kind. Like for me, to give you an example,
absolutely.
I like watching dramas like Netflix. I love
Yeah,
Netflix.
that's what I mean by do things you
Yeah.
enjoy. I mean, could be,
While
that's
cooking,
such a,
while cooking, I'm watching Netflix.
absolutely,
I'm totally
absolutely,
rest.
absolutely. Whatever you enjoy, within within reason.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be vacation like for a month
Yeah, it
in,
doesn't have,
you know,
no.
Italia,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So so there's the boundaries, and I think as you grow in your profession, you have more, you can make it a variety, right? So
Hmm.
financially you're able to do, but it doesn't mean that you don't have the financial means that you can't ever have self-care. Another thing for me, I think self-care is just being with people, being on the phone while driving from work. I'm calling one of my friends, chit-chatting, how
Awesome.
are you? That's self-care,
That's self-care.
you know.
Spiritual, there's, spiritual means,
Yeah.
there's, right? Like
I think for me that's very
walking,
yeah, like
meditation.
physical meditation, even like a 5 minute like stretching, that's self-care. And then I think another thing for me, um, I um I pray a lot. I think that
Mm-hmm.
helps me. And also
Absolutely.
like, seeing people from church. As for me, when I
Mm-hmm.
am hurting and I see them, being supportive, or I see them so positive, it reminds me to be positive too. And maybe somebody from church is hurting, when I get to listen to them because my value is helping others, it's self-care for me when I get to help others. So
Mhm.
self-care might be different for, everyone, but there is a way to get there. I know, we're, pressed for time, so I wanted to kind of wrap it up, really
Okay.
quickly. To maybe two more questions. So, you
Okay.
mentioned to me, when we were talking before the recording of this show about a book called The Myth of Normal by,
Yes.
how do you pronounce the author's name?
Gabor Mate.
Gabor Mate, one of your influential reads. So what key
Mm.
lessons, maybe like one, two, or three things, because he mentioned three things mainly in that book. Three things that you can share with our viewers, or
Mhm.
listeners that would be very helpful for them.
I think the biggest thing from that text is to understand this myth that some people have mental health, others are normal, mental
Yeah.
health issues, like it's just we all have mental health, you know, and we all experience trauma. And in that text, I mean, there's various types of trauma. I mean, if you go with that straight definition, obviously we all haven't, um, well, during the pandemic, though, I'd say that was very traumatic for anyone who was living during that time and cognizant of what was happening. Right? But there's different types of trauma. Um, and our society is created in a way that can often drive us into this achieve, 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 achieve,
Hmm.
and not take care of ourselves.
Yeah, because like we try for that self-actualization, we want to survive. Once we
Mm-hmm.
survive, we get to achieve. So you're
Right.
saying that in the book, we are all the same. We have the same issues or maybe similar issues in different contexts, and it's very
Mm-hmm.
important to take care of ourselves. I think I actually Googled that book, and one of the
Mm-hmm.
things I learned in that book too was that it's very important to find your purpose of some sort, that
Yes.
it's not enough to be okay. You have to go beyond yourself. Why is that something that we do as humans? Why do we want to give, a part of you, and being
Mm-hmm.
useful, like you want to be useful?
Right. Right.
Why is that, like, normal for all people?
I want to say deep down inside, yes. I don't necessarily know that their experiences have conditioned them to behave in that way always, but yes. Like for example, when people get into recovery, the first thing that we're told is you find a way to help someone else.
I never heard about that. So could you repeat that for the people in the back? Tell
Yeah,
say that
yeah,
again.
yeah, yeah. One of the first things you're told when you're getting into long-term recovery is find a way to be useful. Get
Mm.
out of yourself. You know, uh, uh, Go move the chairs or talk to somebody who has one day if you have 2 days, or like help other make yourself useful, and it brings you out of yourself so that you're not constantly thinking about your issues,
Gives
your
you a
problems.
reprieve from the overthinking that most of us
Mhm.
humans do, and being
Right.
caught up in our amygdala, right? So
Exactly.
you mentioned about strategies earlier. So if we were to ask you one specific strategy that you would share with everybody when being triggered, right? How can they get out of that so that they can be, they won't hurt themselves, or they won't continue with coping mechanisms that are harmful for them? So like, that's one thing that you can share
Hmm.
that they can do
Hmm.
now. They don't have to wait till tomorrow. If I do this now, it will help me.
One of the most useful things for me, and for others that I have worked with, is is building your self-awareness of what is actually triggering you. Because
Mm.
often we don't even know what's happening. You smell a smell, you don't even realize that the smell reminds you of something. We're triggered through all of our senses. So becoming aware, you can do that simply by recording when it happens, and you start feeling, like just paying attention to, okay, what just happened. Even journaling it,
I was gonna say journaling.
yeah,
People always say that you gotta journal.
journal, when it happens. Uh, this is what happened during this time. This is how I'm feeling. Just writing about it, and
So
and
what?
continue to record these. And
Um,
as you record them, you become more self-aware of what's causing it in your environment, and talking to someone about it.
yeah. So you said recording what happened, and then how you felt about what happened,
Mhm.
and
What
then
you were thinking,
what you were thinking. Okay.
what you were thinking, what happened, and over time, if you continue to record this, you'll start gaining more
In a pattern.
self-awareness.
In a pattern. Like every
You'll start
time.
seeing the themes. You'll recognize the themes, and then you become, what's the word I want to use? Able to regulate yourself more, because now you recognize. So now the space between stimulus and response gets bigger,
'Cause that's our
because
goal.
now that's our
Stimulus and
goal.
response. You have to extend it or make the distance bigger than before. So just to reiterate what you said, one of the
Mhm.
best ways that we can do now is to journal or talk to others so that we can see the pattern, record, because awareness is key. Awareness is the first way to find out what's bothering you, what's triggering you. You can't
Mhm.
address something you don't know. It's kind of like putting a band-aid.
Right.
There's a wound there. Let me put a band-aid, and it becomes worse and worse and worse without going
Mhm.
to the doctor and finding out, ooh, something is causing that. You'll just put
Yeah.
band-aids forever until you lose your hand.
Right. And then finding a way to get out of yourself and make yourself useful.
Yes.
Right. Like finding a way to make yourself useful is so powerful, as we've already discussed. But
Yes.
that as well, and opening up and trusting someone, finding someone you can trust.
Mhm.
And that might sound easy, but it's not for many.
Yes.
It's
I
not.
think I just found an acronym HAT. So H stands for helping other people, right?
Uh,
Um, A stands for awareness, and then T is trust.
Beautiful.
Be aware, journal, um, find people that you
Mhm.
can trust that can guide you and listen to you. And
Mhm.
then once you are aware of what triggers you, once you can trust others, that not everybody will betray you, and you're in a positive mindset, you can turn and help other people turn your suffering in and make meaning of it, turn it into something beautiful. Just like what
Mhm.
you've done in all of your career, being the director of academic success at the College of Southern Nevada, as well as being a counselor at, can you tell us more about where, the name of your company?
Keller Counseling Services. I kept it simple.
So, what's the website again? KellerCounselingServices.com. Is that the
dot,
website?
dot care.
Dot care. Okay. Again, awareness, trust, and
Yeah.
help other people. I think
Yeah.
that is something doable. You don't have to
Right.
buy something expensive to make it happen. You can just do it starting today. You have been vulnerable, you have been authentic, but most of all, you have been so courageous and inspirational. It's been an honor
Thank
to
you.
interview you as a friend, as a colleague, as a somebody I look up to.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And just one more thing. I would just like to add one more thing. So many people that I work with or have met who are in leadership roles, um, send me messages, um, asking for help or wanting to find a way to get help, and are concerned about how they'll be judged, or if they open up, what will happen. And And I understand that. I get the discrimination, and the stigma is very real. Although I see it changing, I do believe that there are some improvements happening. That I just wanted to share that one of the most powerful things in my life as well is when I finally shared my truth and started opening up and telling my story. It made me a more powerful leader and individual.
And I think that
So find someone.
your ability to trust the people around you and to also
Mhm.
be ready, like, oh, if people discriminate me after this, that's totally fine because I know myself. I've already worked through what I struggle
Mhm.
with. I know how to manage my triggers. But for the people that I'm going to reach that really need to hear what I'm about to say, that you're looking at a leader who has a past and continue to struggle, yet never giving up and still helping other people, I think that's more powerful than any other consequences um, other than inspiration. Don't you think? So thank you
Yes.
so much, Dr. Keller. And I
Thank
hope
you.
you enjoy your time in Ohio, and we'll see you back here in Las Vegas.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks for joining us. Don't miss our next episode on July 18th when we'll dive into the incredible journey of a friend who fled her homeland after a death threat, rebuilt her life in the US only to face a failed marriage, but then found love again. Tune in for an inspiring story of resilience and new beginnings. This is Courageously Speaking with Maria Soriano.